What's shaking? Hey, I'm Rick Jordan. Today, we're going all in. All right, today we're going to jump into some controversy, which is freaking fantastic because this stuff is near and dear to my heart. Growing up in a church setting myself and always seeing, if I could say, the poorness of pastors and just this weird view and perspective around money. I got news for you. Everybody's meant to have resources, and we're going to dive into a cool conversation with two dudes today that are right at the forefront of this type of controversial discussion. We've got Nathan Apffel, what's shaking, my man, and Chris Ayoub. Welcome to All In.
What's up, Rick?
Guys, I'm pumped for this because, Nathan, you're an Emmy-winning filmmaker, which is freaking fantastic. Chris, you've got military and business experience, which I have a lot of friends that have that amazing combination. First off, for you two, how did you get together?
Well, we've been dating for years.
That's cute.
No, Chris, you can tell them the story. You're good at this.
Yeah. So prior to this, I was the president of a large homeowner association management firm, and
that's so sexy, by the way.
Oh, it's the sexiest industries. By the way, guys, I kind of feel left out that I'm not wearing a black T-shirt.
Yeah, where's the memo, man? We're gonna talk about that. I'll give my team on that and send it out ahead of time.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, when I was exiting from that industry on the day-to-day side, I was figuring out, okay, hey, the next thing I want to do, I really want to make an impact, not just in like corporate America. I want to for humanity. And so I started exploring, was looking in the mental health space. I'm a combat veteran, so very dear to my heart is the whole mental health side of things. And I came across a gentleman that was in the same industry as me in the HOA side. And he was telling me about his 2-time Emmy award-winning filmmaker of a friend, Nathan Apffel, who's been on this journey. And at that point in time, Nathan had been on this journey for 10 years. And he wanted me to meet him as a potential business partner. Nathan was at a point where, he had filmed 60%, was really looking for not just a capital partner, but an actual, brother to be in the trenches with on this, because this is a huge thing to take on.
Yeah.
And that's how we met. And I'm like, the future looks bright.
Yep. That's awesome. I love how I started into this too, because it's intriguing because you guys are talking about the, really like the business of religion. And when I was involved in the church scene, being an ordained pastor, right, I actually helped found 3 churches. I was always the number 2 guy. And I always saw this business aspect of things, from a productive perspective. But what you're diving into is not the productive perspective at all of the business of religion.
Yeah, we're diving into kind of the legal architecture that undergirds the entire nonprofit sector, and then the religious exemptions in particular in America. I had a very interesting conversation yesterday with a very high profile pastor. And he was like, he's like, you have to ask just one question to every pastor and they'll melt. And it's, why aren't you being honest? And what we basically present the argument that in the US, there's 3 different sandboxes that you could play in from a business perspective. There's the for-profit world, there's the nonprofit world, and then within that sandbox of the nonprofit world, there's the religious exemptions, the religious nonprofit. And when you look at all 3 of those sectors, you'd say, okay, which one should be the most accountable, the most transparent, have the most integrity, be the most humble? And you'd think it'd be the religious sector. But of those 3, it's the darkest, most shadowy in regards to any type of accountability or transparency. And it's no one person's fault. It's really just the legal architecture here in the US has allowed this, what was a mouse-sized problem, to become an elephant-sized problem in the last 60-ish years.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to dive into that. I will never forget, guys, and I don't think I've ever told this story, but it makes sense for today. When I was probably 15, 16 years old, because I said I grew up in a church, right? The denomination was the Assemblies of God, right? Mm-hmm. With a Pentecostal background and everything. And the business of this religion was something I learned about early, where everyone understands the concept of a tithe, right? And that's something that is, there's several passages in the Bible that are tried to be referenced to say, hey, this is what you got to do, right? And which, by the way, I'm much more evolved than that at this point, because it's not this hard and fast rule. But I remember that the pastors of the churches that are employed by the churches as the pastors in the Assemblies of God, their 10% is owed to the district, to the structure, to the organization. And I will never forget this. It was like a collection call that the youth pastor got from the district. And he told me about it. And the way that they went into this was like, you didn't send your tithe into the district this month. And he's like, oh, whatever, times are tough or whatever. I think I just forgot. It was some normal human reason.
Yeah.
Some normal human reason. And I remember the questions like, well, did you pay your light bill last month? Did you pay your mortgage last month?
Yeah.
So it was those types of questions. And I'm sure this is part of what you guys dive into, right? Is this kind of weirdness?
Well, that is the linchpin to the Christian problem in the system. Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, they have different forms of giving than Christianity.
Yeah.
But I was raised in the same ilk. Like, hey, Nathan, here's your birthday money. Go give 10% to your church. This is your tithe. And it always rubbed me wrong as a kid because I'm like, this isn't going to God. It's going to this dude or this group of people. And then they get to decide what is like, look, I get it if it was going into a homeless person's hand or an orphan's hand or a widow's hand that needed it. But I'm like, I don't get why I got to give to this building. And this is what I would say one of my personal biggest adventures in the production of the show was learning this concept of tithe, this Mosaic concept in the Bible, and then it goes back to Melchizedek. But what it does is it goes back even further than that. And I'll tell you right now, every single church or pastor that preaches tithing will not be ready for the show because we are going to show that everybody's theology and belief on this is wrong.
Yeah.
And if you say 10%, you're misguided at best, or you're abusing it at worst to inure yourself and get wealthy.
Yeah,
and you're not going to be happy with what we're about to present in the show.
Right on. I'm intrigued. I mean, normally this is for the end, but where's your docu-series airing? Streaming platform, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. So we produce for Amazon. So
very cool.
Amazon's kind of our second base hit, and I know they probably won't want to hear that. but our goal is to really create a national dialogue and then eventually a global dialogue.
Yeah.
And so with Chris's experience in regards to the business world, we're looking at alternative models. We want 200 to 250 million people to watch this in the first 3 months.
That's cool.
To create a global conversation about this to where no church and religious organization or secular nonprofit can hide. You're going to know the questions to ask. You're going to know, where the buttons to push.
Yeah.
Because we really are going to demand reform to the sector. And so Chris is doing some amazing work on kind of, let's call them creative collaborations, which could eventually turn into tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of views.
That's really cool.
And if you know any distribution, platforms, Rick, we're having those discussions right now. Because another thing that was very interesting that was shared with Nathan yesterday with this high profile pastor, was really cool is, somebody that's been in that system for so long said that you all are going to be behind the next great reform for the church. And that's cool. Having that discussion, that was really, really, it needs it, right? The nonprofit sector as a whole, it's a $1.42 trillion market for donation. That's $890 billion globally for Christianity, just Christianity, and then over $540 billion for secular nonprofits. Now, we were alluding to this earlier. What's the big difference between those two? Well, secular nonprofits turn a 990 in. The 990 revenue, expenses, top salaries and such. The biggest black hole is the religious exemption side.
Yeah.
M&A guy. Like that's how I've made My career so far is like doing a lot of mergers.
Diligence, right?
Yeah, they're doing M&A like crazy. Oh, let's get this, nonprofit and scoop it under us, and we're going to turn it into a church. Let's take this radio station, this TV station, like a hotel, an orchard. I mean, you name it. Like, it's out of control. These conventions, associations, and auxiliaries and churches, like, there's a lot of sandbox play in there.
Yeah, for sure. You guys have some great sized spiritual balls, I'll tell you that, to go after something like this, and I admire you for that. Because I mean,
that was the.
I mean, just from our conversations, obviously, I think the three of us share some sort of story of a background in faith. Growing up in it and everything. I've been curious about this my entire life. And to your point, Nathan, I've always had the thought too. Where you said it goes to some dude. And that was the thing, is like, I believe still, and I can make the assumption, and stop me if I'm off base about you guys on this, but none of us are saying the churches are bad whatsoever.
No. And we're not saying faith is bad. We actually encourage people to explore their faith, but we're saying these institutions that we kind of take. I use the example of, hey, everything in my purview in this box is my reality. Outside of my reality, I don't know what is real or fake. I don't know what's going on. So if I was raised in a mega church, I think this is church. If you were raised in a Pentecostal church, you think that's church. If Chris is raised in a Roman Catholic church, he thinks that's Christian church. But what we don't realize is these are all just man-made institutions that have. I was talking with this professor the other day, who's an expert in the early church. So from Christ dying and the apostles going out to really Constantine, that's like his wheelhouse. Yeah. And we were talking about this interinfection of Christianity in Rome at the time. When Constantine became a Christian, Christianity, which was this organic, almost fluid philosophy, started merging with government. And good things came of it because the Christianity influenced Rome, but then Rome also brought these institutional pillars into Christianity. Yep. And the institution was, hey, we build buildings, we organize, we build boxes and structures, and you kind of removed the organic organism of Christianity, so to speak. There was a relapse of that, which is really cool. And that's the founding of America, right? Yeah. Like after the Reformation and the Church of England kind of started falling apart, the Pilgrims found America, and they said, hey, this is awesome. We can build our own religions. We can do whatever. And there was kind of this rebirth of this organic organism. But then what do humans do? We build boxes and we build institutions and we organize things and we're pack rats. And so now we're just in my opinion, we're at this death cycle, so to speak, of this institution again, where reform has to come. And so, yeah, to your point, it's like, we're not discounting faith or even the church. We're saying, hey, these institutions have become so institutionalized with so little accountability, external accountability, that they're eating themselves from the inside out from fraud and embezzlement and inurement.
Yeah. This is such a cool collision of areas of expertise and passion as well. Because, Chris, M&A guy, right? I just took my company public, and our whole strategy is a roll-up. And you talk about transparency. That's one of the reasons I did it, because everything is out there in the open.
Big time.
For sure. And just like, as it should be, to your point, Nathan, everything with church should be there and righteous and good, and it's supposed to be that way, because there's a lot of good that church in its organic nature can do for communities, for people, for humans, for hearts, for families, for everybody that exists in the entire world, when, like Chris, when it's structured the right way and it can be transparent.
Yeah, I want to add, Rick, you just brought up, and we're absolutely, not saying, church is bad. It goes a few levels deeper. It's what church, because what like when you're talking about like doing real good for the local community, I mean, the whole tax exemption exists for the concept of local social capital, right?
Yeah.
what is a church? Well, churches have now turned into, as I said earlier, radio stations, they're private jets, they're people's homes. So what is a church? Like, we have to even go back and go, let's define what a church really is. And
that Chris, is where the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
Because of separation of church and state, the IRS can't define what a church is. So pretty much anything could be a church, and people have just gotten wise to that idea, and smart businessmen and women have gotten wise to that idea. And I'm painting with a very broad brush here, because there's a lot of really good pastors out there, but a lot of shrewd businessmen and women who don't have the bench, like most honorable of intentions, see the nonprofit sector and then the religious exemptions in particular as a great way to make a lot of money under the table.
No joke.
And so, and that's what I got to sit down with Philip Hackney, who's the number 3 brain in the US on religious exemptions. And he's like, Nathan, the government wants nothing to do with religious exemptions, but you guys got to get your house in order, because there's so much, you're talking about almost $1 trillion a year in giving, and there's so much abuse and fraud and inurement pressing on it that the whole system's going to cave in. And he's like, we can't touch it. So go get your house in order.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're here to do. We're really here to define what a church is. Because to Chris's point, is a hedge fund a church? And on paper right now, a hedge fund can be registered as a church.
Wow. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, a for-profit vehicle whose entire structure is to generate profits can be registered as a church as long as there's one line somewhere on their documents that says, hey, one day we'll give it all back.
One day.
And it's like, one day.
That's crazy.
Well, so much nepotism in churches. It's generational wealth just passed down.
Yeah.
You see a lot of churches, the board, it's family. And then it goes to the son, and then it goes to the son's son, or the daughter, and it just keeps passing through. I mean, that's a huge part of it as well too.
That's incredible.
Well, it's interesting, Rick. I have a question for you, because I'm not a businessman. I'm a creative. Like I'm so grateful for Chris and his wisdom in that regard, because he brings such a level of structure and business ethic to things that I don't have. But so I'm sitting here with 2 businessmen right now. What would be your pitch for the reason why a corporation or a company should be accountable and transparent?
Oh man. I mean, you're asking probably, I'm going to say this in a confident way, the right guy for something like that, because I'm looking at the 2 of you, and you're saying that the business guy, right? I'm also a creative. I mean, I made a documentary 4 years ago about the pandemic with a filmmaker from LA. In the church realm, as the number 2, I would always fill the business role because I could, putting structure to it, but I was also the worship leader. I was the worship pastor. I mean, I go back 30 years playing guitar and drums, and my dad was a band director and all of that too. I love the creative aspect of this. So when I took a look at the church, there was a statement all the time in all the churches I was in that the pastors would make, where they would say, "Hey, I don't know what anybody gives," and I was like, and once I got in the inner workings, I'm like, that's such bullshit. You of course know what everybody gives, because I've seen the reports now that I'm in the inside as well. But then in the transparency, it's like there was always a meeting, like an annual meeting, which you had to have or whatever, or at least they said you had to have, where there was budgets, and they said, hey, this amount of money is going to these areas. And probably the church that I grew up in was the most transparent about that. The 3 churches that I was not the guy, I was always a number 2. I positioned myself as the number 2. I didn't even know where everything was going. In that, I'm like, how can we guarantee integrity around our programs that we're offering? And even to more so, it's like, I never wanted to, even though all of them wanted to pay me a salary, I never took a salary for many of those, because I was still building businesses. I'm like, I'm covered. And I am donating way more than 10% of what I'm bringing in, because I believe in this thing. I've got a passion around this. I want to see this succeed. I want to see it do a lot of good for a lot of people, and that's why I'm involved in this. That's my why, as being a part of this. I have a faith, and it combines with passion to be able to help people. Mm-hmm. So can we not be transparent in this? And oh, by the way, I don't want a salary, because I don't want to be beholden to anybody in accomplishing that mission and that vision of my own personal self. And I also believe that the dude, as you said, Chris, I don't believe that the dude should be paid by the church, because it does allow that separation and allows no conflict of interest, which I think could also bring a lot more transparency. And I don't know Rick Warren personally, but I know that there was a point, he wrote Purpose Driven Life, as I'm sure you guys dove into him, right? There was a point, at least reportedly, he gave like his entire past history of salaries back to the church at one point when he had this similar kind of epiphany. And he related it to scripture and how Paul, traveled from town to town. He was a tent maker, traveled from town to town, and did not take money from the churches that he spoke at. He worked and he labored to provide for his own needs. That way he could also maintain that ethical degree of separation and transparency.
So this is my question, and this is the name of the show, The Religion Business.
Yeah.
I think we need to look at these institutions. Saddleback, Rick Warren.
Yep.
You need to look at Saddleback as a business and say, hey, how do we run this business as streamlined and as efficient and as accountable and as transparent as possible? But because of the regulations, which most of them were written in 1913, since 1913 here in the US, it's created this opaque, which used to be kind of hazy, but now is literally a black room because Congress through tax reforms was lobbied to add additional language in to loosen up the regulations even more. And so like you talk about that background of, hey, our denomination was pretty accountable. I would argue denominations had some accountability and structural oversight, but as non-denominationalism's skyrocketing and denominationalism's crashing, it means it's the Wild West now. If all three of us are non-denominational pastors in our town here, and we all have our own churches, I'm beholden to no one except who's on my board. There's no oversight. The government doesn't sit above me, and there's no denominational structure. So the abuse in the last 40 years has gotten exponentially worse because that denominational accountability is gone or is disappearing.
Chris, could the answer maybe be, coming from a public company now, could the answer maybe be the transparency required for a public company combined with the tax shelters for a church to actually produce something in a good way?
Yeah, it's like there's a strong argument that for capital companies are doing a lot more for the community than nonprofits. And I also believe that the transparency and accountability, like the education for someone to know where their money's going, how it's being used, and being a part of that is extremely powerful. There is no education on that side. There's not this is where your money's going, this is how it's being used. Nathan just got back from Uganda, and one of the nonprofits he was meeting with there, you want to talk about doing excellent work. For $20,000 a month, they're feeding hundreds of kids, providing shelter for hundreds of kids, training skills, good things. And you see how far a dollar goes. Well, nonprofits like that have partnered up with churches in the United States. Those churches then take the marketing material, the suffering child. Hey, this offering is for these people, and they'll take half of whatever comes for them. And so it's like, it's just such a dark hole that until you have accountability and transparency into it, people's expectations, right? Only 3% of donors ever follow up to ask where their money goes. Like, we kind of all need to have like this awakening in a sense of saying, you would never invest in a company. These are investments we're making in humanity. It's investments we're making in social capital. You wouldn't invest money into a company blindly without knowing, private or public, what financial situation.
Here, Rick, here's a great transition to Chris's point. The Christian church has enough resources right now that flushes it in annually to solve the top 20 global social issues, and it would affect, this is what's crazy, no one's bottom line.
That's amazing.
Joel Osteen could, Kenneth Copeland, they could still take their salaries and fly on their private jets. The only thing we would have to solve is the theft portion of it. Yeah. So because there's no accountability, 53 billion, and this data is a couple years old now, and I'm going to drop a bomb on you. 53 billion is stolen internally by church staff every year.
Wow.
That is a voluntary data given. That's voluntary data given to a think tank. So this think tank just polls churches and says, hey, what you brought in on a Sunday compared to what you dropped into your bank account, what was the delta? And 53 billion, and I believe that data is 2022. So they texted me a couple of weeks ago and they said, hey, guess what 2024 is shaping up to be? And I said, how much? And they said 86 billion.
Wow.
And the reason is it's not rocket science as to why, because as technology expands and develops, the laws and regulations can't keep up with it. And so there's just more and more ways to take money from people and glean money from people, from reoccurring payments that people don't know they're signing up for, to reoccurring donations. And so there's the thing, if we just stop the theft, the church could solve the top 20 global social issues and it would affect no one's bottom line. If the church just steered a small portion of its resources on top of that to solving global social issues, it could solve the top 30. You could still have the buildings and the big worship bands and the salaries and the donuts and the coffee bars and all that. And the Christian church could radically transform the world tomorrow. And my argument is if it just kind of mirrored its savior a little bit more.
Yeah. How does that theft take place? I mean, Chris, I'm sure you can speak to this because I'm thinking like old school days, right? In the church, passing around the offering plate, cash getting dropped in, what happens? Is it the back room where they're counting it, that they're stuffing it in their pockets?
That's a big lot of it. It's from the time it gets collected between then and the time that it would get recognized in the accounts.
Wow.
That does not include, embezzlement and inurement. So a great story is at Joel Osteen's church, who, big pastor down in Houston, runs Lakewood. They had a plumbing issue in one of the bathrooms. And this is a few years ago now. And so they brought a plumber in and he tears off the drywall, and behind the drywall was $600,000 in cash. So someone who was collecting the offering plates every Sunday would run it to the back and stuff a couple hundred in their pockets and, got to go to the bathroom. And then they drop it down the air vent, in the wall just for their retirement, fund. So someone had stacked 600,000 in cash from the offering plates.
That is insane. It's almost like you would want to be like, I was at Six Flags of all places on Monday, right, with my kids, and they don't even accept cash anymore there at the concession stands and all that. It's just cards. It's almost like it would be safer in some ways. It'd be like, hey, digital payments only, digital donations only, rather than cash.
This is one thing that Chris can talk to is we're not just here to bang our drum that, hey, there's this major problem. We're here to solve it with some tech solutions. But right now, technology has been leveraged strictly to milk people for more money. Yeah. So there's a couple technologies in the church and they guarantee on their websites, one of them says, hey, we will 10x the revenues we pull from people. And you look at their model and all they're doing is having old people sign up for reoccurring payments. And who in their right or who in their humble mind would go ask their church for their money back?
So these are consultancy businesses, financial, like church, religious consultancy businesses that will just come in.
There's one that says, hey, we will get your congregants to give you stock. So we have this app now where they can donate stock and they say, we will 34x your giving. And you say, how is this possible? It's because people don't know. They can't do the math right offhand. Oh man, I'm going to donate a couple shares of Apple today. They didn't realize they just donated $800. Maybe they thought they were going to donate 100 or 200. But so, and these apps are Christian apps. But when you look at their website, there's no hey, we want to bring accountability into the system. Hey, we want to help better steward resources. It's, we will 10 to 34x your giving. We will streamline things, make you more efficient. And they call it generosity.
That's crazy. It's like you go to buy a car and they're stuffing things inside the payment and they don't show you the numbers to go back into it.
It's that's a great analogy.
Yeah. So in the, I mentioned this earlier. Nathan's been working on this for over a decade. Done a ton of research, read tons of books, met with people all across the world. And, it's investigative journalism. And through that process, he's identified 7 to 8 loopholes that a lot of this fraud, waste, abuse, and inurement happen in. And so when we went at this together and said, hey, we're going to partner up, we're going to do this, there was two big things. Number one is that we're coming at this from a place of love. this isn't anger. This isn't, we want to tear the place. Yeah. No, we want to come at this with a place of love, right? We have a higher expectation for the faith we were raised in. This is out of love. Humans will human. We're all imperfect, victims of a system, whatever you want to call it, but we're human. The second one is, we aren't going to sit here, toss a grenade and run away. Okay. A lot of people can do that. A lot of people can be critical.
A lot of docu-series and documentaries are. Yeah, for sure.
About the man in the arena. Yep. We're here, to be in that arena. We're here to bring a solution to market. So we have a software platform that is very multi-purpose. It's an accountability one. How's it an accountability one? Well, for like a lot of the information that secular nonprofits would provide on an I-90, we're going to be gathering that data. Revenue, expenses, officer salaries. Let's see a copy of your P&L. How are you spending your money on missions? What are your missions? Those types of things. What is your pastor's salary? Do they receive a housing stipend? Because there's a lot of cuteness there, which I make $100,000 a year, but I receive a $15,000 a month housing stipend. So there's a lot of that there. So think, hey, we're not saying that X percent of, because the number is about 44% goes to salaries. We're not here to say that should be the benchmark. It should be less. It should be more. We're here to say, tell the people that are donating how the money's being used so they can make an educated decision. If they're cool with that, it's a free country. Let them donate where they want to, but let them be empowered. And then the ability to engage and ask questions and follow up. I mentioned to you earlier, only 3% of people who donate actually follow up to see where their money's going, and opportunities to volunteer. The beautiful part is that while all this data is being gathered, we're calculating a light rating, a light score that shows how transparent they are. And you're able to pick up geographically, of course, where you're going with churches. On the secular nonprofit side, it's kind of think about it as a dating app in a sense. You're aligned with your interest. I'm interested in mental health. Well, I'm going to get aligned with and mental health nonprofits. I'm going to be able to see how transparent they are. And then should I choose to, I can make a donation and it'll facilitate the donation for them. So that's what we're out here to accomplish. There's all these global social issues that are not being solved. And there's a strong argument that they don't get solved because there's so much money that's involved in it. Like once a problem is solved, wouldn't that entity need to dissolve? But it's hard as a human to walk away from something when that's your identity and that's your income. Yeah. And it goes, you were saying about like being beholden to, as it relates to the pastor side of things. So that's where we're headed, man.
That's really cool, because I can envision this, and I'm sure you already have, right? I see a site, stop me where I'm wrong, right? To where it's almost like a voluntary participation, and it could be, and it would actually be better for church organizations to volunteer their information first. I mean, we're talking about the legal reform that has to be done, the tax reform that has to be done regardless, right? So it's written in the law. But then even if that didn't happen, because I mean, that's a big battle, as I'm sure you guys have discovered, it's a big battle you're in. But if churches and other nonprofits would volunteer their information for this, they would actually probably 10x or 34x their givings just from being transparent.
Well, that's the conversation that I had yesterday. Is the guy was like, well, only 2% is given to the church annually. And I'm like, well, maybe if you want more from people, you should show them where their money's going. Yeah. Because if all of a sudden I'm like, hey, Rick, our app, we've dropped the global deaths from malaria because there's a cause we're focusing on. If we drop the global deaths from malaria. And it wasn't Bill
Gates that did it.
Yeah. From 1.6 million a year to 1.1. So like, dude, in the last 3 years, we've cut 30% of deaths, 300,000 or whatever that is, 500,000 lives. Like, and you gave $100 last year. Can you do 200? Because we really want to eradicate this. Yeah. You'd be like, heck yeah, dude, let's do it. Because you want to know what? We see the impact. We see the global response. And like, and so Chris and I are all about this. We are here to bring democracy back into institutions. because right now churches and nonprofits are built like little authoritarian huts. It's a few people control massive resources, sometimes with no accountability. So we want to flip the pyramid and say, hey, it's the donor who has all the power, and they expect performance and impact from their leaders, whether that be their religious leaders or their secular nonprofit leaders.
That's so cool. I mean, you guys are actually this done the way that you're doing it is actually meant to expand the reach of the church.
100%.
Freaking incredible. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, I was gonna share this with you. I'm newer to this journey with Nathan. Like I said, he's been on this for over a decade, and there was some pretty cool aha moments I've had throughout. I just would love to throw some random trivia at you just to kind of see if it's a light bulb moment for you as well too.
Let's roll. Yep. It's like a lightning round at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah.
All right. How many denominations are there within Christianity across the globe?
Oh, geez. I would venture several thousand.
Yeah, it's north of 40,000.
Holy moly. Yeah, I wasn't thinking that high. I was thinking like 8,000, but yeah.
How many churches are in the United States?
Oh, if you're getting into home churches and all that, I mean, you're probably talking...
No. Registered churches.
I got you. I would still say probably in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, 400,000.
Yep.
How many Starbucks are in the U.S.?
Starbucks? Where are they at now? Is it like the 40,000 stores, something like that?
No, it's less.
It's less?
Yeah.
So Starbucks are on every corner, right?
Yep. And there's 400,000 churches.
I think there's 16,000 Starbucks.
Wow.
There's 13 to 16,000. I think there's 13,000 McDonald's, which are on every corner, and 16,000 Starbucks. There are 400,000 churches.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is a new church right here, right? The All-In Church.
Exactly.
I mean, we get a bit of a crass joke, but it's just as realistic as how you're painting it, is that could legitimately be.
You're right.
Yeah. Well, so since the IRS can't define what a church is on paper, they can define a corporation.
Yeah.
They can define an expense allocation on a tax document, but they can't legally define the word church because of separation of church and state. So they have this thing called the IRS guidelines, and you learn about this in the show. There's 14 guidelines.
Wow.
And of those 14 guidelines, you only have to check a couple. And it's really simple. You have to have a creed. So whether, like, let's say you're the Nicene Creed, or the creed of All-In, or the creed of Chris, and then you have to meet. And this is a big one that's going to
or the band creed. I mean, they're making a comeback.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to have a creed. You have to formally meet in person. And this is what's going to blow a lot of young pastors' minds is they're trying to move their churches online. The government does not see church as an online church.
Wow.
So if you move strictly online, you are no longer a church and will lose your exemptions.
Incredible.
And so people are just so arrogant or naive, let's say, to the tax guidelines that they don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But then another one is you have to meet at a minimum once a month in person. So now you have pastors running churches where they only meet once a month. They're literally trying to check barely check these boxes to be able to retain their religious exemptions on paper.
How many actually know this?
I've talked to hundreds of pastors, and very few, like maybe 5% of them know.
I bet, because it's probably, I'm trying very careful. I mean, to not like rip on church, you know what I mean? And I'm sure you guys are too. It sounds like you've done this in a very tactful way, and you have a good goal to expand the church. But in that, it's like, I bet you the reason to move online is really dollar signs.
Yeah. Well, so we will, I'll say this. We are here you, Rick, Chris, and I, and every single pastor from the Joel Osteens and John MacArthur's of the world, all the way down to the little guys, are all byproducts of this current system in the IRS tax regulations and guidelines. So it's no one person's fault. So we're trying to say, hey, we're not pointing the finger at anybody. We're all byproducts of it. We've created this system that's ripe for abuse and fraud. And so, there's really dirty players in it, and there's really good players, but they play by the same playbook, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, let's educate people on the playbook, And so by the end of it, people are going to go, whoa, this is a really disastrous setup because we're primed to fail. Because if you're a Christian, you know that humans are flawed and humans will always human. Humans will human, as we say. And so if there's $100 I can take off the table, at some point, I'm going to take that $100 off the table unless there's some regulations keeping me from taking it, right?
Yeah.
And so we are not here to destroy this idea of church or the institution. We're here to say, hey, it's time for reform. And yeah, man, I would say we've flushed out the idea as best as we could to this point.
To this point, and maybe there's a season 2, right? In the docu-series, that would be cool. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
And maybe,
Rick,
yeah.
One last thing. Which denomination has the most assets?
Oh wow! I mean, I don't know the answer, but my gut goes to Catholicism.
So it's actually the LDS Church, and Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah,
and
that would make a lot of sense.
In assets to buy every team in the NBA over twice and still have 20 billion left over.
Wow.
They're 260 plus billion.
Wow. Holy moly.
They're on track to hit $1 trillion in assets in 20 years.
Second largest landowner in the United States.
Yeah, that's like the whole state of Utah.
Well, they're the largest landowner in Florida, the private largest landowner in Florida. We're exploring a story that's going to shock a lot of people about what the LDS Church is doing in Florida.
Wow.
They've bought tens of thousands of acres, and they're planning on building a city, their own little Mecca. And no one knows about this. And it's all under the umbrella of church.
Incredible.
So, yeah.
Guys, you're awesome. Everybody needs to see this. It's on Amazon, right? We need to follow this. Instagram is @religionbusiness, Twitter @religionbiz, B-I-Z, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I mean, maybe Chris will throw up some workout tips on there too. Dude, I see your shirt and I see your arms, man. No, you're actually, exactly. Yeah. I love it. I like how you try to cover it all up, right? One reason I wear the black t-shirt is because you can actually see what's going on. But it's
a black muscle tee, man.
Yeah, I know, right? That was the memo. That was the memo you needed. But cool. Guys, I appreciate your hearts because I think that's where we need to end this, is exactly that being the case. Your hearts are huge. And that's the position that you're taking this as, and you hit it on the head. I appreciate your approach so much because it's not meant to destroy. It's actually meant to strengthen and then grow from a point that it's never had before. You're amazing. Yeah. I appreciate you guys.
Hey, likewise.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
All work done with cybersecurity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.